Hi there. Welcome to another video in the Engaging with Art series. The topic for today's discussion is limitations, and specifically how limitations impact an artist's practice or the way that they produce art. This was actually inspired by a conversation I had with two friends when discussing how it affects writers in particular. I've always been very passionate about this topic because as an artist, I genuinely believe limitations are actually quite helpful. That's why I really wanted to sort of explore it in a Engage with Art video. I think it's a commonly held misconception just in general that limitations are stifling, but I would genuinely argue to the contrary. Maybe too much freedom can actually inhibit the creative process more so. In a sense, I often find that having no boundaries can feel vast and intimidating. Having no stipulations means there's also nothing to grasp. There's no starting point. It's so open that the endlessness of the possibilities can almost become difficult to navigate at times. I think that parameters allow an artist to know the limits of what is possible and then to push those limits and thus create a sort of resistance, maybe akin to something like weight training. I do want to stress before getting into it more that this video is meant to be speculative. I want to share my speculative approach to the topic through my experiences and my understanding in hopes to just inspire and encourage other ideas and see what we can arrive at together. So let's look at considering artistic media in a broad sense. Technically speaking, an artist working with just one specific medium for the totality of a career would be a limitation. For example, a writer is using the written word, and a painter, on the other hand, is always using paint. And so from the beginning and the end of their careers, they may stick with that medium, and technically that's a limitation because they're choosing to express through that one medium. It might sound very broad or vague, but I think that's a really good place to start for consideration. Now, over the course of a lifetime, what we would naturally expect is that the artist in question would actually probably become a master of that craft. What's happening in that sense is the limitation the artist is imposing upon their work by having one medium essentially is forming greater prowess in that particular medium. The specificity, therefore, sort of brings about greater professionalism, as mentioned, a greater mastery of the craft through continued practice over and over and over. The same couldn't be said for somebody who is maybe dabbling in a lot of different places. We human beings are finite. We only have so much time. We only have so much capacity to involve ourselves with certain activities. So I think naturally, if we wanted to dip our hands into all kinds of different media, we would not necessarily be as well trained in them as, say, we were to just limit ourselves to one. Now, of course, within a particular medium, we then can look at specificity. There's a degree of granularity, right? Where you can see how specific can we get in one particular medium. Some examples I have are working with just one color palette an artist prefers, like sticking with maybe earth tones for an entire body of work, or even some artists who work strictly monochromatic, say just black and white. In writing, one could focus on being a poet. And if one is going to be a poet versus, say, a novelist, what they're going to produce is going to be different. Obviously, we're going to have poetic structures. We're going to have poems. We're not going to have necessarily novels. But sticking to that is another limitation, so to speak. The example that really started this conversation between the two friends of mine and I was Shakespeare's sonnets. He confines himself to a particular form in his sonnets, and as a result, you have very unique modes of expression over the course of all the 150 sonnets. So that's, again, an example of how the imposed limitation allowed him sort of a framework to explore within. Other examples are, say, a painter who only does landscape paintings, or a musician, but not just a musician, maybe just a vocalist with a guitar, and maybe only an acoustic guitar. So the totality of the music that they produce over their career is strictly acoustic with vocals. Again, we might look at this from the outside and think maybe it's stifling, but I truly believe that if an artist sticks to these modes, if an artist wants to commit to these particular singular objects within a craft or these very specific parameters, that over time the artist is going to be able to become more and more adept and explore sort of the reaches and the possibilities within those specific medium. I'd like to take the time too to use my own work as a case study, essentially. I very much consider myself like an only what is necessary type of artist. I always start from zero because I don't like to bring in that which is superfluous or that which is unnecessary to my practice and to the production of my work. That's a large part for me why I stick to colored pencil, why I'm so particular about introducing new modes of working or ideas into my practice, because I want to make sure I'm doing so sincerely, that the work is coming first and that I'm not trying to be crafty or clever in that sense. One of my bodies of work the last 5 years incorporates graphite, and this is the first time I've done that with colored pencils. This is very much a very first for me, and so over the course of the production of that body of work, I really explored and experimented with my sketching to determine how that would impact the work before fully incorporating it and making that decision. A really good example that I want to bring up of my work is the Windows series. The Windows series has a very strict 6-color palette. All of the figures are rendered in sepia, and all of them don similar attire. The models that I use in that, I have two. I use myself and I use another individual. And all of those figures have hair up on the top of their head in some fashion, and they're wearing sweaters. Geometric forms veer towards representationalism while never reaching it in the Windows series. That's another hallmark of that series as well. I think very quickly, if a viewer looks through all 30 currently produced iterations, they will find that indeed there is a very consistent sort of compositional approach. But I find that there is a thrill, and has been a thrill, to the way I produce that series, because it's giving me parameters in which to explore, in which to build and see where I can go further. The most recent pieces at the time of recording, the Beneath the Veil _swallow.exe iterations, looking at those compared to what came in the previous 16, it gave me a chance to utilize what had come before and then expand upon it, but still sticking within the specific parameters. So for me, I find it becomes this sort of playground, that there's just possibilities within this little structure that I've made. It allows me to stay true and authentic to this series and the ideas present, while also having that flexibility for whatever might arise. Essentially, the way I look at it is that the conceptual premises are established, the tool set is established at like the fundamental level, and then I'm allowed to explore and play within that, and I just keep myself honest and authentic to the practice. As I wrap things up, I would like to help you as the viewer consider what are the effects of the limitations on an artist's practice and on finished work, in order to better understand the effect that they have on you incorporating yourself or interacting with the work. Again, I think limitations offer a framework or a grounding for an artist to begin. And I think what it does is it allows an artist to express in unexpected ways. Limitations sort of invite us to be surprised. They really do. They invite an opportunity for us to see something innovative in a particular medium. And likewise, I think as viewers, it gives us an opportunity to recognize the mastery of a craft, because as stated, when an artist specifically chooses one medium for the entirety of the career, it means that the individual is going to attain a sense of prowess and a mastery. And so over time, we as the viewers can appreciate that more deeply. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this has been a very worthwhile watch, and I hope you'll share it with anybody else who might find it worthwhile to help them engage with art in a more thoughtful and considerate way. Take care, and until the next one, bye everybody.